Welcome back to the Garden Hutch. Today we discuss week 38 of 2022. Let's get going. Well, week 38 was not quite as awesome as the few weeks before it. The weather had been cooperating. Week 38 was kind of back to summer as usual, if you will. We had 3 to 4 days that were at or near 100 degrees. It was super hot, humid. So needless to say, our fall plants, a lot of them didn't like it. The turnips, they did fine, and the radishes did fine because they're a little bit more hardy. But the carrots that had just started and our small beets, they got beat up. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to kind of take you through the fall garden and kind of show you where we're sitting right now, and then kind of discuss the plan going forward. Well, as I said, week 38 was brutal from a temperature standpoint, and last week we had gone through and looked at these beds. So this week I wanted to kind of show you down here where our carrots and stuff are growing. I don't know if you can see these. They're the same color as the compost beneath them, but all of the carrots in this bottom bed are now dead. So what I'm going to do is this next week I'm going to go through, I'm going to turn this whole thing and I'm going to plant carrots again. As I said, we have a whole bunch of them. We got them for a really good price. What we do is we buy them at bulk at our local co-op. So it is literally, this whole bed will take less than $1 to plant again. So it's really just the effort, and I don't know, I'm a little disappointed because it was looking so good. You put all the effort into it and planning and such, and then you have something that, outside of your control that sort of comes through and derails your plan. But that's part of it, right? Like, part of growing your own food is overcoming obstacles and things. So that's what we're going to do. But again, part of the idea of this channel is transparency. So I just wanted to kind of show everybody that no matter how much you plan, no matter how much effort you put into it, sometimes Mother Nature has a different idea. So if we juxtapose the carrots to the turnips, you can see the turnips loved it. It didn't bother them much at all. Now, the thing about turnips is if these turnips were a bit more mature and we had a heat wave like that, it would probably make them bolt and go to seed, which would turn the root themselves kind of pithy, hollow, and they just wouldn't taste good. But because it's early in the growing cycle, it probably actually helped them out quite a bit. The next thing I wanted to discuss are the Roma tomatoes. Now, we know, anybody who watches this channel, we cover it quite a bit because tomatoes are my favorite thing, but tomatoes enjoy the heat. So you can see from last week to this week, these tomatoes have absolutely taken off. The one thing that did happen was we had blooms come on some of these tomatoes. And see, there's a few back there, you can see them, but whenever that 100-degree weather hit, we had 2 sets of flowers that just fell off. Not only that, but most of the flowers did not develop. So this was earlier in the week. We're headed towards the end of the week now, and you can see that the plants have bounced back quite a bit. There's some more flowers coming on all the plants and that sort of stuff. In fact, it's getting to the point where it's time to do a pruning. So what I'll probably do is, for our Thursday video this week, I'll do a video of going through and I'll record planting and trimming and doing all the fall garden maintenance, if you will, so that anybody who has any questions sort of has a guide for that. But this is really what took a large hit. You remember last week these beds were full, and you can see now there are just large patches of these turnips that have been killed off. So again, what I'll do is I'll go through and replant this in the areas that are bare. I'll go through and I'll just kind of break up the rows in between, and then where the beets are already established, I'll use those same mounds and I'll just put a little hole in there. The advantage to that, of course, is that you don't have to plant them as thick because you have some beets that are already established. So any of the ones that are kind of looking pathetic or whatever, I'll go through and I'll take those out. And you know, that's part of the thinning process, and then I'll just throw the other seeds, plant them accordingly between. So that might work out in the end. So I am really disappointed though that we lost the beets. They're one of our favorites. I was hoping to show this, and I believe I'm going to be able to, so this is kind of exciting. We've been talking about basil for a little while, and see if the camera will focus here, but do you see these little, how it's starting to turn brown here at the ends? If you pull these off here, like so, and we'll see if we can roll it around in there and get the, and these guys, there you can see it. The seed is ready. That little black, that is a mature basil seed. You can save these and use them the next year. We'll leave these on here and go through and just pull off the brown pieces until the majority of the stem turns brown. The seeds do way better if they cure on the actual basil plant itself as far as germinating the next year or so. That's something we've been talking about the last few weeks, and this gives us an opportunity to look at it. So this guy has gone crazy. There are some massive tomatoes. I'll show everybody this on our Thursday video this week. I'm gonna go through, and now that it looks like we're past the 100 degrees, I can go through and I can thin this out and pull some of the branches off the developing tomatoes to give them some sun exposure. It'll help them ripen and sweeten up a little bit more, but it's not necessary. You can leave them just bushed out here if you would like. I find that it's easier for pest control and that sort of stuff to go through and thin them out underneath. So we are really excited with how the tomatoes going. You know, I said in the intro that it was kind of devastating. The truth is, really, I think just the beets and maybe the lettuce over here. Oh, speaking of, let's take a look. Some of the lettuce got burned up a little bit. The butter crunch, you can see up there at the top, we're kind of missing some, and that's okay on this butter crunch. And the reason being is the butter crunch, it's going to come up into a head, so it needs a little bit more room anyway. But right through here, all of this died off, so I'll probably just plug in a few there and maybe 1 or 2 seeds up here to kind of fill it out a little bit or whatever. And then over here, this is the leaf lettuce, and it looks like what we did, because Leslie and I kind of planted together on this. So I think I planted off of her. She was planting the radishes, and I put my leaf lettuce here a little bit too close. So what I'll probably do as well is go down the middle here and put in a few more lettuce seeds. So that's good. Also, as we mentioned, we are highly disappointed that we lost all of our carrots. Now, the north end of this bed up here, all of the carrots died because it has way more sun exposure. The south side down here, it has a bit of, because of the fencing and such, it gets some shade and it doesn't get near as much direct sunlight. So you can see the difference here, how these rows, hardly any of them, you know, you have those right there that burned up, and a few of them up here in this corner. But most of these carrots made it, and then again juxtapose that to this top where we only have, like, out of these entire rows, we only have a few of the carrots that survived. So again, what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll just sort of redo this whole end. Those couple carrots that are left are really not worth the effort of you know, just replanting on the line. So I'll go through and I'll just sort of break up all of the soil, and maybe what'll happen is we can have a couple different stages of carrots, so it may be a happy accident. So I just want to reiterate once again that these things are unpreventable a lot of times. Like, there's nothing you can do about the sun. Now, we could have had our shade cloth out and that sort of thing, but I still think the temperatures were hot enough where, especially the beets and the carrots, they would have been adversely affected anyway. But we wanted to make sure that we show the good and the bad. Are you gonna let me throw it this time? No. So the next thing I'd like to do in this week's vlog is kind of give you an overview of the food that we're still able to eat out of our gardens. This is kind of a tricky time of year here on the homestead because we're going through another one of those shifts, right? If you'll remember back in the spring into the summer garden, we were fortunate enough at that time that we still had our Swiss chard and we still had our kale so that we were able to eat salads every day. Well, right now, because of the growth of the cayenne peppers, it kind of shaded out my normal salad bed. So my goal was to have the salads every day for the entire year. And it was crazy because we did so good right up until August, and then the cayenne peppers just took off and shaded out the kale and the chard, but we're still getting some of the chard. So let's just take a look. Most of the food is coming out of this pallet garden, so we'll just run through it real quick. I'm telling you, it is forever with this stick business. All right, so the reason we're up here is I wanted to just kind of go through what we're eating on, and predominantly almost all of our food is coming from these 3 beds and of course our little cast iron planter over there. But last week I showed you after we had picked, and I just want to point out once again, I'm going to have to go through here and pick banana peppers. They are absolutely everywhere. We're making pizzas now, just like pepper pizzas. I made one Friday, which I guess this will come out on Monday. So, you know, the Friday before this video comes out. And the whole thing was just a huge mass of peppers, enough to where even with the cheese and such, they were kind of falling off. And we still have all of this food coming off of these plants. That's a weird color. But they are beautiful. They taste delicious. And these bell peppers, again, I know I feel bad for talking bad about them at the beginning of the year, but we are getting more bell peppers than we really know what to do with. So here you go. Look at these guys in here. You know, it's like every week. Oh, look at that. I splashed water on the camera. There we go. Heck, maybe it needed to be wiped off, who knows. And then back over here, you'll remember that Leslie picked like a bucket and a half. And when I say bucket, I mean 5-gallon buckets, but a bucket and a half of these cayennes just last weekend. And already, if you look at this guy, there are baby peppers and flowers all over the place. So that heat wave, apparently, you know, of course, peppers love the heat and the tomatoes. So the heat wave will help these out. That'll, you know, make a lot of the flowers and stuff come out on these. It's just that it was terrible on our beets and carrots. Look at these guys here. So, but as I mentioned, we are no longer getting a salad every single day. This over here, we can eat about 2 salads a week. You can see right now, you can tell I recently took a bunch of the leaves off of it, but you know, it bounces back in just a couple days. You'll have nice new leaves all over the place. So but over here, we're still able to substitute some of the larger leaves on this chard you can see down there. But as I mentioned earlier, the size of this cayenne pepper has just sort of exploded, and that shaded out the kale and the chard, which again, that was a mistake on my part. So next year I'll rectify that. So we should be able to do our salads all the way through the year next year. And then we come to the cherry tomatoes. Now, you can see in here, we've already picked all of these cherry tomatoes. You can see how many of them are on there. And then we have these new clusters coming all over the place. I mean, it's just one thing after another when it comes to the clusters on these tomatoes. This time of year, we don't have near the issue with blight and that sort of thing. But now that the 100-degree weather is over, I am going to go through and I'll trim this cherry tomato up. I've already shown that, so I probably won't put it in Thursday's video. It'll be a lot like we do the beef masters and the Romas. But good morning, Melindra. You can see she's over there at work. She's got her breakfast already caught. Just a couple things here in the wrap up. To start with, if you have not, please consider subscribing to the channel. It goes a long way in helping us out, and it's free for you. Also, if you could hit the little thumbs up button below, that really helps us out. Kind of gets our stuff recommended to other folks. So I wanted to wrap this video up real quick by just kind of giving an update on the chickens. They have reached their full maturity finally. They're not eating quite as much of our own food because, you know, we had some rain and everything is sort of growing, doing really well. Had a whole nother round of weird bugs and stuff in the yard, I think, you know, because of the drought and then the nicer weather and such as we went along. Also, it's just not as cool as it should be this time of year, but we're crossing our fingers that we get some of that. Another thing is our beehive. I just wanted to touch on that real quick. So we came out one morning and our beehive, it was leaning pretty bad. And so I started looking around, and what happened was we had a mole that had gone underneath the cinder blocks on one side of the beehive. And so when we got some rain that came through, it settled and the whole beehive went down. So we had to do an emergency rescue of the beehive. All we did was we went through and we just found some appropriate size wood that would fit underneath there to sort of level it out. But once the winter time comes and they're sort of dormant a little more and set up in the hive, I'll probably go through and redo underneath of that. I'm just not real sure what the protocol is for, you know, adjusting a beehive like that. It seems pretty intrusive, and bees are kind of finicky anyway, so I don't want to mess that up. So I think I've rambled long enough in this video. As always, we appreciate you folks. And until next time, I hope all of you take care of yourselves. Peace.